Today's presentation is just to go over the changes to flood insurance that went into effect last October and to show the upcoming changes to our coastal risk flood maps that are due to become effective on December 15th of this year. If you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand during the slide. Chances are if we move on, I may not be able to go back, or you may not remember the question. Here's a little background on Charlotte County's participation in the National Flood Insurance Program. Congress created the National Flood Insurance Program in 1968. It was created with two purposes. The first was to share the risk through flood insurance, and the second was to reduce flood damages by restricting floodplain development. Communities that join the National Flood Insurance Program are required to adopt the minimum standards of the National Flood Insurance Program. Once adopted, federal flood insurance becomes available to the citizens, and flood maps become available. Also, FEMA grants become available. If yearly, FEMA puts out grants to assist homeowners in elevating their structures or performing other forms of mitigation. It's only available if you have flood insurance through the National Flood Insurance Program. Charlotte County received our first flood maps in 1971. So we've been doing this for a little while. Homes that have federally backed mortgages, Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, are required to carry flood insurance if you're located in the special flood hazard area. Flood insurance is typically separate from a homeowner's insurance. And if there is a storm out in the Atlantic and you want to get flood insurance, you can't. Once the storm is in the water, they won't let you get flood insurance until after it's gone. Risk Rating 2.0 went into effect last October 1st. Policies that were already in effect didn't really see any increases in their flood insurance rates until they renewed this year. Previously, flood insurance was rated just by looking at the flood maps. You were either in a flood zone or you weren't. And pretty much everybody in the flood zone had the same rates. Over the years, they realized that that really wasn't equitable, that there were people that had a greater risk to flood, even if there were others in the floodplain as well. Risk Rating 2.0 is the first changes to flood insurance policy rates since the 1970s. They've actually looked at flood risks now, and they've put a greater weight on how close you are to a flood source. It's not so much whether you're in the floodplain or not. I'm in an X-flood zone. If I get flood insurance, because I'm on a canal, my rates will range anywhere from $2,800 to $4,800 a year. And that's because I did not have flood insurance in place before this went into effect. The people that will see flood insurance increases, those are capped at 18% per year. So if you're going to go up $1,000, they cannot charge you more than $180 for that first year. And then, of course, they'll recalculate every year to what that 18% is. It's estimated that nationally, 3/4 of approximately 4.9 million policies will see an increase. Yeah. These flood insurance rate maps are no longer going to be used to rate whether you're in a flood zone or not. They will be for mortgage purposes as to whether or not you have to carry flood insurance, but no longer will they look at it and say, yeah, this is your rate. Now they look at construction, year of build, and of course, how close you are to that flood zone, to that flood source. Now, another side note is that if you don't have a federally backed mortgage, your mortgage lender may still require you to carry flood insurance, whether or not you're in a flood zone. Sometimes those are just banking policies. So I would recommend that you reach out to your lender and find out. Charlotte County, along with other counties throughout the nation, have seen increases in the national flood insurance premiums. The future of FEMA's program may need to include changes in development policies and practices in these high-risk areas, and we're also hoping that FEMA will start to show future conditions in the flood maps so people can see what the possibility is for future flooding in an area. Currently, there's attempts to have that 18% cap drop down to 9%. It's been in front of Capitol Hill a couple times. I don't think it's going to go. But a lot of people understand that even 18% is a lot of money, especially if you're on a fixed income. This is Charlotte County's flood insurance premium statistics. The decreases are at the top. Only 6.7% of all policies will see a decrease. That means that 93.3% will actually see an increase. Most of those increases are $0 to $10. That's per month. These are all monthly increments, so $120 a year is the group that will see the largest group that will see an increase. Then $20, we've got 31.7%. And it goes up and up and up until you get to that 0.1% that has $90 a month increases, which I can't even imagine. As I stated earlier, that 18% cap is in effect. So if you get an insurance increase and it's more than what you think is right, that 18%, reach out to your insurance agent. That's important. It's a new program. We all make mistakes. We're all human. Any questions so far?
Yes.
Okay.
You mentioned your increase or the increase for people that did not have flood insurance prior
Yes.
versus the other.
Yeah, if you were...
Go into that a little bit more?
Yeah, if you had flood insurance in place already, if I had, because I'm in an X zone, if I had flood insurance at the preferred rate premium, I would have paid maybe $600 or $800 a year. And because I didn't have it in place, I have to pay the full quote. When the maps change and I move into a high-risk flood zone, my bank will say, you've got to carry flood insurance, and I'll get hit with that $2,700.
So for those of us that have flood insurance and have had flood insurance.
Yeah, you're kind of golden because you can only be increased at 18% increments. You won't get hit with the big, out of pocket like I will be. Yes?
I'm being told that I have a new construction and I need an engineer to assess my canal. Do you know where I would find this engineer?
I'm not sure why you would need an engineer to assess your...
For a chain link fence.
Oh, for a chain link fence. It sounds like maybe you're in a floodway.
Alligators eating my dogs.
Oh, well, you might be in a FEMA floodway if you're on water. And typically, that's kind of what it sounds like to me. What you would need is an engineer to provide a no-rise certificate.
Where does one find this engineer?
Yeah, I know, I understand. You have to just call around and try to find one.
I can help you with that.
Oh, good, good.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yes. Yes.
How many years do you anticipate these increases
To last, it depends on the amount of increase. This is what they call a glide path. We fully expect some people to be on a glide path for years until they meet that full actuarial amount. So it could take a while. Yes?
Just that my bill was $5,000 this year, but since I'm grandfathered, it's $1,000. So it'll go to 5,000. It'll take 4 or 5 years probably, but it's gonna.
Oh, it'll take a little bit longer than that. But yeah, well, just remember you've got that 18% cap. Hold them to that.
They want to charge me $5,000, but it was $1,000 last year.
Yeah. Yes.
Is the recent increases in ordinary homeowners insurance, hazard insurance, have anything to do with this too?
They don't, as far as I know, because one is not like the other. I don't think they do. I think that's just the nature of the beast.
The ordinary homeowners insurance is a huge increase
Yeah,
this year.
yeah, I agree, but I don't believe they're connected.
Yeah, she's working
Yeah.
with roofing claims,
Yeah. Yes, sir.
We were in an X-flood zone.
Yes, sir.
Up to now,
Yeah.
okay. There used to be what was called a letter of map revision.
Yes, sir.
Walmart. Is that still a process?
It is still a process.
Okay.
If-
And the reason I'm asking is
Uh-huh.
that according to we have a 2-year-old survey, we're out off of 17, and it's a pretty clear cut that we're at 11 feet.
Okay.
All right, so I'm not understanding where they're pulling, if we have to get flood insurance,
Mm-hmm.
where are they pulling that from?
Have,
Because we haven't had a flood there in
well, and that's part of the misnomer that people don't really understand. The 1% chance flood, it used to be called the 100-year flood. And people just figured, okay, we had the flood last year, we're good for 99 years. But that's really not the way it works. It's a 1% chance flood. It means that over the life of a 30-year mortgage, you've got 26% chance of flooding. And for those that are in the X zone, outside of that high-risk flood zone, in that lowest risk, 25% of all flood claims come from that lowest risk. So there's no such thing as no risk. It's just what level of risk are you at? Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned that the rates are going to go up, but on this document, this one from FEMA,
Yes?
it talks about if you were in a flood zone X, your premium could be less than $250 a year.
That's an older document. I brought it because it gives information about elevation changes. And that's something we'll discuss as we go a little bit further. The new maps are bringing not only a new flood zone that we haven't seen before, but a new elevation datum. And I'll get into the nuts and bolts of that as we go further.
So this 250 is no longer
Oh, that's not me.
accurate?
No, I don't believe it is. In fact, I don't know if I've ever seen flood insurance at $250. I think the lowest preferred rate policy I ever saw was $600.
400.
400? Good for you.
14 years ago.
Oh, yes, sir.
Just for clarification,
Yes.
if I'm understanding what you're saying is that elevation means the land elevation. And everything is based on the new maps. So therefore, if you build above the code requirements, or even let's just say this, if you lived in a 2-story building and you were at 18 feet in elevation,
Yes,
you
sir.
would still get the same flood rate as you would if it was actually down at 8 feet.
I would say no, but insurance agents will tell you you do not need an elevation certificate anymore to get flood insurance. I say hockey because you really do need an elevation certificate. An elevation certificate is going to give you an accurate rate. Otherwise, they're going to say, well, they're going to give you maybe not the worst case scenario, but they're not going to give you the best case scenario. Your elevation certificate proves what your finished floor elevation is.
Okay,
It proves what your machinery is elevated to. Yeah, yeah. And those elevations, like I said, with the new maps, things are going to change with elevations. Yes, ma'am.
And we have a fairly new home, and we cannot use our survey that shows the elevation.
No, FEMA wants it on a FEMA-approved elevation certificate, unfortunately. But I would go back to whoever the surveyor was that did your survey.
They do not have it.
Oh, I mean, to ask them to build one for you. It might be at a discount since they've already,
Okay.
yeah, that's, and if you don't have an elevation certificate, there is a lot of construction going on. If you want to get one, before the maps go into effect December 15th, I would suggest you start working on it now. Yes?
If you don't have an elevation certificate, one of the things that you can check is either the county website or the City of Punta Gorda's website. They do have it, you just put your
Yeah.
address in, and for some of the older homes, they may not.
Yeah, we do have some, but we don't have all. Yeah.
So you might want to
Yeah.
check and see if.
And if your house was built before 1971, there's no way we have it, because we didn't require it for construction purposes. But the maps have changed over the years, so at one time when your house was built, it may not have been in a high-risk flood zone, so you may not have had to produce an elevation certificate while you were building. And then the maps changed and put you in one, and so yeah. But like I said, there's a lot of development going on. A lot of surveyors are very busy, so I would recommend contacting them soon.
If you sell your home,
Yes.
can the new owners just take over your flood insurance?
They
Or-
can,
So
yeah.
that it can, they
Yes,
don't have
so
to-
that it stays in place
Right.
without being interrupted. As far as I know, they can. I would reach out to your insurance agent, but I believe, yeah,
Okay.
yep,
That's huge.
yeah, it is huge. Yes, sir.
I heard that some companies are bailing out at the end of the year.
I've
So
heard that
just my-
too, but I
my
don't know
policy
any.
goes till June, but they're bailing out in January. And you guys, you just had come new policy, $5,000?
I honestly, I don't know. I don't know how that's going to work. I've heard rumors. I don't know anything. I don't have any solid information. Yes, ma'am.
You can transfer to the
Yeah.
new buyer, just make sure that they fill out the paperwork before closing.
Right. Good point. Very good point. Yep. All right.
Would you repeat that? What was that?
The transfer of insurance, if you're selling your home, you can transfer your flood insurance policy to the new owner, but make sure you do it before closing.
All right. Although the flood insurance changes and the changes to our flood maps are timed very closely, they are not related. Our flood maps are changing because of a nationwide effort by FEMA to update the entire coastline of the United States. This has been going on for years. From what I understand, when Hurricane Sandy hit New Jersey, everybody sat back and went, you know what? Our shorelines are really outdated. And so FEMA was tasked with remodeling the entire coastline of the United States. It's our turn up to bat. It's as simple as that. It's just timed very closely, but really not related. Okay, and this was what I was telling you about. We have a new coastal flood zone. And back before, currently, our flood maps are either, their high risk is either the A zone or the V zone. V is in velocity. The V zones are typically along your coastlines. You have some up around the mouth of the Peace River. And then your A zones are typically up the rivers, in canals, along those areas, lakes, other water bodies. The V zones are all are determined by wave heights that are 3 foot and higher, that crest 3 foot and higher. And then the AE flood zones, or the A flood zones, were always at under 1.5 foot wave crests. Well, along the line, they figured, well, you know what? There's a lot of damage that can happen in between that 1.5 foot and 3 foot. And so this is where the coastal A flood zone was born. When the new flood maps go into effect, this will go into effect as well, and it will include higher regulatory standards for building in that area. You will be required to build to the same standards as the V zone, with one exception, and that is that you can have a stem wall with backfill if it can be engineered. If you've got enough land height elevation and the base flood elevation is low enough that you can engineer a stem wall with backfill, you can use it. Otherwise, you're on pilings, anchored in. That's also known as the LIMWA, which is, in case you didn't realize it, FEMA has an acronym for everything. Your CAS is your coastal A zone, LIMWA is your limits of moderate wave action. And this is an overview of our maps. This is just a screenshot. This is our current maps over here on the right, and our preliminary flood maps are on the left. That dark line that you see on the left, those are the limits of moderate wave action. That's your coastal A zone. Those lines go towards the water. So everything that's towards the water from that line is within that coastal A zone. And that's probably going to affect your insurance as well. So if you're in a coastal A zone or soon to be a coastal A zone, there's a heads up.
Ma'am,
Yes.
okay, so I understand it.
Uh-huh.
I didn't mind to understand it. Basically, everything in red is bad, and everything in green is no.
Yes and no, because that would be that would be way too easy. The green is the high-risk flood zone. The red and the yellow is your velocity, higher flood zones. The map on the left actually has a different color coding than the one on the right, and we did that on purpose so that you could distinguish, so that you would look a little bit deeper and know that there is differences between these two maps. And this is also where that new elevation comes in. Currently, our elevations on the flood maps are elevations whenever we have contours that you're looking at online, your elevation certificates. Everything is done in NGVD 1929 datum. That is the National Geodetic Vertical Datum that was made in 1929. Yeah. The new maps will incorporate NAVD 88 datum, and that is the North American Vertical Datum that was established in 1988. And there is a difference. There is a difference in sea level. You're above sea level is considered zero. So your lands along the coastline are typically 2 feet, 3 feet, 4 feet. That's above sea level. And with the North American Vertical Datum, they noticed that that's actually, with better technology, that zero line was actually not where it shows on the NGVD. So as we move forward, when you look at these maps online, one is not the same as the other. If you see an 8-foot flood zone here and an 8-foot on the left, because they're two different vertical datums, there's a difference. You need to add 1 foot on the left to get that apples to apples comparison. So if your flood zone is 8 on the left and you've been living with that, and the new maps say it's 8, it's actually 9. It's gone up a foot.
When you
So-
say sea level,
Yes.
we don't have significant tides over here, but on the East Coast, it's not unusual, especially the further north you get, to get huge tides. How is that figured into this?
I honestly, I don't know, except that with the big tides and with, the possibility of sea level rise in the future, that's where you see a lot of what they call king tide floods, sunny day flooding, where there's no storm, but there might be some wind that pushes the water up through the stormwater systems and your roads are flooding even though it hasn't rained in days. Yeah. And I've walked neighborhoods like that. I've seen fish swimming in the roads. There's a famous picture that somebody took in Miami, because Miami's pretty much ground zero, of a parking garage and an octopus in the middle of a parking garage. So it's, yeah, so it's there. And the last slide, oh, again, these maps go into effect December 15th of this year.
Is this all on the website somewhere?
It is.
Uh-huh.
That was really good. You walked me right into that slide. So yeah, do charlottecountyfl.gov, do a /flood, and that'll take you right to our flood web pages. There is an interactive map gallery. If you go to the map gallery, the very first one that comes up on the left gives you that side-by-side comparison that we just looked at. In fact, I can bring it up if you'd like, look at a couple of addresses. Yes?
Sure.
Okay. I think that's the end of our slide. Oh, let me give you my information. If you have any questions, reach out and call me.